Miles smiles as he lays back against Agenda. He and the rest of the guys are lounging around the room in tight pants and open shirts. They're all wearing the shield rings, and they've all personalized them to form small axiom totems. The PT that they all kept up had chiseled each of them into looking more like male strippers than soldiers. No weapons but the Kutha and Jehest rings. Rings that Miles had ridden everyone to practice with until they could not only get a good shield going, but turn it into an offensive weapon too, something they need in this kind of mission. They're deep in enemy lines and being fawned over by the numerous alien women all around them and fawning over them in return as a distraction. All the women are obviously armed, and there are guards around the room. Only Captain Lilpaw was in there with them beyond the numerous armed women and the singular leader in charge of all this hidden from view, but in arm's reach. "I must confess, Captain Lilpaw, you give a tempting offer," a deep, husky woman's voice says from behind the thin curtain. There's a massive figure there and the slight light of an enormous smoking cigar. "The product is good, and you're clearly a woman of wealth and means, despite the mean little ship you showed up in." The figure purrs from behind the curtain. "It's a silly trait of the galaxy. If your ship is rough-looking, then they assume you're a raider or a trader, not anyone running anything," Agenda remarks as she fiddles with her drink glass. "Come here, my pet. How do you like the taste?" she asks Miles, who slinks over and takes the slightest sip. "There's kick," he whispers as he reaches up to kiss her on the cheek. "I loved it," he says out loud. "Then you may have it, my darling little Tret." She gushes at him as he takes the drink that's toxic to her and mildly entertaining to him. "A fair point, my dear. I hope the drink isn't too much for your darling little Tret. Perhaps he would enjoy some Orsa honeyed Liga wedges to dull it," she offers, and a Kutha-ringed tray floats out from the curtains with a flower-shaped display of bright yellow fruit glistening with crystallized Orsa honey. "No, thankest thou, milady, sweetness is rarely a sensation I seek," Miles says, just to be obtuse and have the woman sweat. Now, my dear little Tret, there's no cause to be rude. You're drinking the generous woman's drink and have been offered her food as well. It's rude to refuse," Agenda says with a smile. She knows she can be seen through the curtain. The game is afoot. "If thou insist, mine love," Miles simpers in the exaggerated and stupid accent. It's a slice of hardened candy that tastes like a grape with the texture of a dried orange. He almost spits it out with the strangeness. The woman behind the curtain relaxes somewhat, then seems to go into agitation as Miles takes a deep pull of the drink. "Are you certain the Liga wedges aren't to your taste? I find they pair exceptionally well with the Morita liqueur," she asks, and Miles shakes his head. "Oh no, I'm quite all right," he responds, and there's a dense silence that descends. The men lounging around the smoky and cramped room all repress the urge to nod. It's just about go time. "I must insist," she says, and Agenda tilts her head. "Why, Madam Vex? Is that a note of concern in your voice? Whatever is the matter?" Agenda pokes, knowing full well that everything was about to happen. The mob boss no doubt wants the men for sale or personal use. The curtain is thrown to the side, and an octet of plasma pistols are pointed right at Agenda. "Take the antidote now!" Madam Vex screams at Miles just before a fist of hard light crashes into her face with enough force to lift her off the ground and slam her into the ceiling. Around the room, there's plasma fire and the sound of hard light constructs slamming into flesh. Agenda, for her part, isn't content to let the boys have all the fun, and she dives on Vex dropped guns and lets loose a couple shots each to kill a quartet of mobsters. "Good work, gents. Arm yourselves. Franklin, this is your time," Agenda orders as the fallen weapons of the mobsters are collected and the entrances of the room are carefully watched. The nerd of the group rushes up to the Cephalin mob boss and puts his hands to both sides of her dazed head. "Your thoughts to my thoughts. Your mind to my mind," he says firmly, and they both start twitching for a few moments. Then he curses as he lets her go. The bright red woman with 6 tentacles forming her hair begins to come to, and he grabs her along the forehead. Her struggles cease. "Report, soldier," Miles barks. The code to her vaults is in several parts. If she dies, it won't work. They're monitoring her vitals. If she's not there, it won't work. If it's input too slowly, it won't work. If it reads her as unconscious, it won't work. That's aside from the panic button we've thankfully avoided or just putting in the wrong code," he says, reaching down into the woman's skirt and pulling out a device that he pulls apart. Panic button gone, he says calmly before focusing. There's a ripple in the air, and the silken blankets she had been luxuriating on wrap around her as a tight cocoon that keeps her nose unimpeded. I'll carry her. You focus on your axiom, Jake states as he stomps over and passes the plasma rifle he had swiped to Victor before throwing the unconscious woman over his shoulder. Got it, Franklin says. All right, we need master access and we need the vaults. Which is closer? Agenda asks Franklin, who grins. The vaults. Even better, there's a master access terminal in there. It's a twofer, Franklin informs them. No difficulty scanning? Miles asks, and Franklin shakes his head. No, I knew I was looking for something specific, so I found it fast. I think a general scan would be a lot more difficult, or at least catch a lot of garbage. Franklin explains. Lectures later, action now. Agenda orders while loping out and sticking a pair of plasma casters in between her breasts to hold them as she moves. Take a left, Franklin says as they all race out in pursuit of the captain. As she races down the hall at the front of her pursuing pack of men, she draws a plasma caster and kills 3 Horchka guards before they can even shout and doesn't lose a step. Left again, Franklin calls out, and she spins on the spot and all but rips the door off the wall to reveal an empty closet. What the hell are you doing? Are you trying to get us killed? She demands as the men catch up, and Franklin rushes past everyone to tap on the walls and then opens a panel hiding a lever. The back wall of the closet moves to the side to expose a stairway down when he yanks it. She considers secret passage's security measures. This takes us right to the vault. He answers before rushing down the stairwells. Behind me, she orders, and he flattens against the wall to let her go first. The stairwell takes them down several floors and they emerge into a hallway. To the immediate left are several guards, and she gives them hot plasma before she even fully registers the sheer difference in the decoration. Gone is the lap of luxury of the upper floors. It's all no frills, no nonsense, and utilitarian. A pair of walls slam together and Agenda skids to a stop before slamming into it. What now? She demands of Franklin, who rushes up to put his hands on the barrier. For a moment it's covered in crackling axiom energy. Then it's gone, missing as if misplaced by all of reality. What did you do? She asks in a horrified voice. I'm not too hot at transfiguration. Disintegration, though, that's easier, he says. You can just undo things you put your hands on, Miles demands in a shocked tone as the implications hit. No, I need to put my hands on it when I want to be precise and subtle. Otherwise, I make a hell of a bang and the shockwave of repurposed energy goes off like a bomb, he says, and everyone stares. Do we have time for this? They rush forward with Vex awakening to start struggling in rage. Her muffled screams of wrath are music to Agenda's ears as she races around a corner, rolls to dodge plasma bursts, draw her plasma casters, and kill 3 off them. There's return fire that fizzles out halfway between her and the enemies. The continuing barrages detonate closer and closer to the enemies as she stares before the enemy plasma weaponry detonates in their hands. She does not, however, lose her focus and scores another kill as the rest of the men sear the rest with plasma fire and another 5 Horchka are dead. How? Agenda asks Franklin, who's walked up beside her with a smile. Plasma and laser weapons are susceptible to atmosphere. A very high oxygen concentration causes a premature detonation in both, and since it's already there, you need to do very little to play around like that, he says as he walks forward. Come on, that's the last of the guards. She doesn't like anyone too close to the vaults. They rush down the hallway, still at the alert despite the lack of alarms going off. Franklin leads them right up to a massive doorway covered in sensors. Stand her up in front of the door and grab her head tentacles. She has specific sensors in each one that need to go off. It's the first part of the password followed by a number code on a hidden keypad. Okay, how do we do this? Agenda asks, and Franklin waves his hand, causing the head tentacles of Vex to glow, half of them flashing their colors. Flashing colors go to the left side, solid to the right. Red are at the bottom down here, blue in the middle here, and green up here. He explains, kicking a lower part of the door, then slapping an upper part before jumping to slap 2 points in the top of the frame. He then steps up right next to the door as the mob boss is wrestled until her tentacles are in the right positions. There's a quick taping sequence a few moments later as Franklin puts in the password and the massive reinforced door opens wide. Goddesses and chrome, there's so much... Agenda gasps in awe as she sees the rows upon rows of Axiom Ride trade bars, each worth 100 of the expensive discs. 10 million credits apiece, and there were hundreds of them. "We're gonna need a bigger boat," Miles remarks with an open gawk at the amount of wealth. "We need to focus. Where's the master access terminal you promised?" Agenda asks Franklin, who's busy pulling up an acid-proof bag from the tether tied to one of his back teeth. He lets out a few sounds of disgust as he pulls out the tiny data chip that his biology had perfectly hidden. "It's right here," he says, opening up a random wall panel to expose a computer terminal. He puts in the data chip and turns it on. "What about the password?" Agenda asks as it turns on and the virus they made downloads itself into the security systems. "Not on this terminal. It's the only unprotected one due to being in the vault," Franklin remarks as the security systems self-compromise, and he punches a code into the terminal. The screen shifts, and there's a wonderful look to Gula on the bridge. "Hey, cutie! Captain there?" the Drin hacker asks, and he nods before stepping to the side. "Gula, let Mercy and Jin know that it's time. I want this entire palace swarming with mech armor and gunner women. We've got their security, we've got their boss, and we've cracked their vault. It's ours." "Captain, is what I'm seeing real? Are those entire shelves of Axiom Ride bars?" "We've hit our biggest payday yet, Gula. We're rich," Agenda boasts with a wide, toothy smile. "Hey, Frank, how'd you do that deletion thing?" Beck asks behind her as Gula is cheering in her seat. "Well, I've tried and fucked up putting things together out of raw Axiom or transmutating things using Axiom more times than I can count. But I can convert things into Axiom and unravel it in that state, basically converting it all into more power for the local Axiom field. The initial energy is when it's in an Axiom state, then it's gone as I feed it into it." "Dude, you're scary." "Coming from a man that can crush I beams like a soda can?" "Yep,